The Stranger in the Rain. The night was cold, and heavy rain was falling without pause. The wind howled through the trees, and the ground was covered with mud and water. In the middle of this storm, a human man walked home from his long day of work. He carried only a small lantern in his hand to light the path, and his jacket was soaked through. His name was Mark, and he lived alone at the edge of the small colony on this strange planet far from Earth. As he walked closer to his cabin, he heard a faint sound. At first he thought it was the wind, or maybe some animal. But when he raised the lantern higher, he saw something that made him stop. By the side of the road, near a fallen tree, there was a figure curled up on the wet ground. It was a girl, but not human. Her skin had a faint glow as the rain slid over it, her hair stuck to her face, and her eyes were closed tight as if she was fighting against pain or fear. Mark hesitated. He had seen aliens before in the colony, but none like this. She looked weak and fragile. She trembled under the storm and seemed like she could collapse any moment. A voice inside him told him to keep walking, to avoid trouble. Yet another voice told him he could not leave her there. Not in this weather, not when she looked so lost and helpless. He stepped closer and knelt beside her. She opened her eyes slightly. They were large and bright, glowing faintly in the darkness. She whispered something, but the words were broken, not in his language. Still, he understood the meaning. It was a plea. She needed help. Without thinking further, Mark lifted her into his arms. She was light, but her body was burning hot despite the cold rain. He carried her back to his cabin as fast as he could. The storm beat down harder. But he did not slow. He pushed open the door, entered, and placed her gently on his bed. Inside the cabin was warmer with a small fire burning. He wrapped her in blankets. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her skin still glowing faintly in the dim light. Mark studied her face. Her features were soft, almost human, but her ears were pointed and her skin had small shimmering lines like faint patterns. She looked at him again, trying to speak. Her lips moved slowly, and finally she said one word in broken English. "Safe." Her voice was weak but clear enough. Mark nodded. "You are safe here," he said, even though he was not sure if she understood completely. He prepared some warm water and offered it to her. She drank greedily as if she had not had water for days. Then she curled into the blanket, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. In moments she was asleep, breathing softly. Mark sat down by the fire, staring at her. Questions filled his mind. Who was she? Why was she out there in the storm? Why did her body feel so hot? And why did her skin glow like that? He had no answers. All he knew was that he had taken in an alien girl who seemed desperate and broken. The night grew quieter, but Mark could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered the look in hers, that strange mix of fear and relief. Something about her presence unsettled him. He felt that this decision, simple as it seemed, would change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. As the fire crackled, the girl shifted in her sleep. A faint sound escaped her lips, almost like a cry. Mark leaned forward, concerned. He saw her hand clutching the blanket tightly, and her body trembled as if fighting something inside. Her glowing marks flickered brighter for a moment before fading again. He frowned. He had seen wounds and fevers before, but this was something different. He did not understand it, but he could feel it. Something deeper was wrong. Something she had not told him. Something hidden, Mark whispered to himself. What have I brought into my home? But even as he said it, he knew he could not turn her away. Not now. Not after he had seen her broken in the rain. The storm outside raged on, but inside the small cabin a fragile silence grew. One human and one alien, strangers bound by chance. And while Mark did not know it yet, this night was only the beginning. The girl's eyes opened for a moment in her sleep, glowing faintly again, and she whispered words in her own tongue. He could not understand them, but the sound carried weight. It was almost like a warning, almost like a confession. Mark leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He felt uneasy, as if the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that was about to begin in his life. He did not know the truth. He did not know about her season, her nature, or the danger it would bring, but soon he would. And when that time came, the shelter he gave her would test him more than he could ever expect. Secrets behind her eyes. The morning came slowly. Clouds still covered the sky, but the storm had passed. Mark stepped outside his cabin for a moment, breathing the wet air and watching the mist roll across the hills. The colony was still quiet, most people staying inside after the heavy night rain. His boots sank into the mud as he gathered a few pieces of wood for the fire. When he returned inside, the girl was awake. She sat up in the blanket, her glowing marks dimmer now, but her eyes wide and alert. She looked around the cabin like a frightened animal trapped in a cage, her gaze fixed on the door, then on him, as if deciding if he was safe or not. Mark set the wood down and spoke softly. "You're safe here," he said again. Her head tilted. She understood the word safe. He could tell by the small nod she gave, but there was more in her expression, something unsettled, almost like guilt. She tried to stand, but her legs shook. He moved quickly to steady her. She flinched at his touch at first, but then allowed him to help. Her body was still warm, too warm for comfort. She whispered it in her broken voice. "Thank you." Mark gave her some bread and water. She ate slowly this time, careful. Her hands trembled slightly. When she finished, she pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders as if she was ashamed of herself. For hours, she remained quiet, watching him. Every time their eyes met, she looked away. He noticed strange things about her. When she touched the wooden table, her skin left a faint glow for a moment before fading. When she breathed deeply, the air around her seemed heavier, like it carried a charge. Mark wanted to ask questions, but he kept silent. Forcing her would bring nothing. Still, curiosity gnawed him. He needed answers. Finally, he spoke. "Who are you?" His voice calm. She hesitated, then whispered, "Alira." Her name was soft, almost musical. "Alira," he repeated in his mind. She belonged to one of the nearby alien tribes. That much he guessed, but something about her felt different. She was not like the proud traders or cold warriors he had seen before. She was broken, hiding something. As the day passed, Alira began to relax a little, though fear still lingered in her eyes. At times, she would clutch her arms tightly, as if holding herself together. She avoided looking at him for too long, as though afraid her gaze would reveal too much. When evening came, Mark noticed her body trembling again. Her breathing grew heavier. She pressed a hand against her chest and leaned against the wall. Sweat glistened on her forehead. "Are you sick?" Mark asked, moving closer. She shook her head quickly. "No, not sick," she said, her voice shaking. "Different. Inside." Her words made little sense. He frowned. "Different how?" She looked away, refusing to answer. That night, as the fire burned low, Mark pretended to rest in his chair but kept his eyes half open. Alira moved in her sleep, twisting and whispering words he did not understand. The glowing lines on her skin pulsed like veins of fire. He could feel the heat from across the room. Suddenly she sat up with a gasp, her eyes glowing bright for a second. She clutched the blanket and stared at him, her breathing heavy. Mark stood slowly. Not wanting to frighten her, she whispered, "You not know. Dangerous?" Diaz chilled him. She looked at him with fear, not fear of him, but fear of herself. She pressed her hands over her face and cried softly. The sound filled the small cabin with sorrow. Mark walked closer but kept distance. He spoke gently. "Then tell me what danger?" She shook her head violently. "You help. You hurt. Me hurt you," she said brokenly. Her shoulders trembled. It was then he realized she carried a secret, something she could not share, something that terrified her. He felt anger rise inside him, not at her, but at the unseen weight crushing her. Whoever had left her in the storm, whoever had abandoned her, had left her to suffer alone. He swore quietly to himself, "Whatever this is, I'll find out." He could not turn his back now. Alira curled back down, exhausted. Her glowing marks dimmed again. Before she drifted into sleep, she whispered in her own tongue. The words sounded sharp, full of fear and warning. Mark caught only one word in English. "Season." He repeated it in his mind, but he did not understand. Outside, the rain began again, light but steady. Inside the cabin, two lives shared the same fragile space, one human, one alien, bound by chance. Alira hid her secret behind her glowing eyes, and Mark could feel the storm inside her was far greater than the one that had raged outside. He sat by the fire through the night, watching her. The unease in his chest grew stronger. He did not know what season meant in her language, but he knew soon he would find out, and when he did, nothing in his life would remain the same. Whispers of mating season. The third night in Mark's cabin was quieter than the last, but the silence did not bring peace. The fire burned low, casting long shadows on the wooden walls. Alira sat by the flames with the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her glowing skin was faint now, but her eyes carried a storm inside them. She kept her gaze on the fire as if afraid of looking at him. Mark had waited long enough. He needed to know the truth. "Alira," he said gently, "what is happening to you?" She flinched at his voice, her hands gripping the blanket tightly. For a long time she said nothing, only the crackling of the fire filled the room. Finally she spoke in broken English. Dangerous." Mark leaned closer. "Dangerous how?" His voice calm but firm. She shook her head. "You help me. You kind. But I bring pain." Her eyes glistened. She tried to hold back tears, but they fell anyway. Mark stayed silent, waiting. He knew pushing too hard would close her off. Alira took a deep breath and whispered, "My people, when time come, body change." She trembled. "It is called mating season." The words struck him like a blade. He had heard rumors of alien customs, but never like this. Mating season. The phrase alone carried weight. "What happens?" he asked quietly. Alira hugged herself, rocking slowly. "We lose control. Heat burn inside. Cannot think. Cannot stop." Her voice cracked. "Families cast us out before it begins. They fear us." She looked at him with sorrow. "That is why I alone." Mark felt his chest tighten. So that was why she had been abandoned in the storm. Her own people left her because of something natural to her kind. He clenched his fists, anger rising at the cruelty. "So they throw you away," he said sharply. She lowered her head in shame. "Yes." She reached for his hand suddenly, her touch warm, almost burning. "You do not understand," she whispered. "It will grow worse, soon. You must send me away before it come on." Mark stared at her hand holding his. Her skin glowed faintly against his rough human skin. He pulled in a slow breath. "If it's so dangerous, why come to humans?" She looked into his eyes with a mix of fear and hope. "Because humans, stronger, maybe can endure." Her words cut deep. She had not come to him by chance. She had chosen to risk everything on the kindness of a human. He realized now that her secret was not just about survival, it was about trust. The cabin grew colder as the fire died. Alira's breathing grew heavier, her marks glowed brighter in waves. Mark could almost feel the heat radiating from her body. She clutched her chest and whispered, "It begins soon." He moved closer, steadying her when she almost fell. "Then we'll face it together," he said firmly. She shook her head, panic in her voice. "No, you do not know. It can kill you." Mark looked into her glowing eyes and saw not just fear but a silent plea. She was terrified of herself, terrified of hurting the only person who had not abandoned her. He spoke softly. "I've survived storms, wars, and worse. I won't abandon you now." Her lips trembled. She wanted to argue, but no words came. She turned her face away, ashamed of the heat already rising in her. Outside, the colony lights flickered in the distance. Life went on as normal, but inside the small cabin, a storm greater than the last rain was building. Mark could feel it pressing in the air, invisible yet heavy. Alira lay back down, sweat beading on her skin. Her body shook as if battling something inside. In the faint light, her glowing marks pulsed like a heartbeat. Mark watched, uneasy, knowing this was only the beginning. As sleep claimed her, she whispered in her alien tongue. The words sounded broken, desperate. He could not understand, but one phrase returned in English, soft and haunting. Mating season. Mark sat awake long into the night, his mind racing. He thought of what she had told him, of the cruelty of her people, of the danger she believed she carried. But more than that, he thought of her eyes when she said he should abandon her. They were not the eyes of a monster. They were the eyes of someone afraid of being unloved. The fire went out and darkness filled the cabin. Mark whispered to himself, "I will not leave her." He did not know what the coming days would bring, but the choice had already been made, and as the cold night wrapped around them, Alira's body glowed faintly in the shadows, the sign of the storm inside her, a storm that would soon break and test the limits of both human and alien, the storm within. The next day brought no peace. The sky above the colony was heavy with dark clouds, though no rain fell. Inside the cabin, Alira sat quietly, but her body betrayed her calm face. Her hands shook, her breathing uneven, and her glowing marks flickered brighter with every passing hour. Mark could feel the heat radiating from her even across the room. He tried to distract her with food, with water, with gentle words, but nothing seemed to ease her struggle. She pressed her palms against her head as if fighting voices no one else could hear. At times she whispered to herself in her own tongue, broken fragments that carried both fear and longing. Mark watched her carefully, his jaw set. He had faced storms, wild beasts, and hostile aliens before, but this was different. This was not an enemy he could fight with his fists or his rifle. This was a battle inside her, a storm tearing her apart from within. By evening, her condition grew worse. Sweat dripped down her neck. Her skin glowed like fire beneath the blanket. She clutched at the wooden table until it cracked under her grip. Her eyes, once soft and fearful, now blazed with a light that unsettled him. She looked at him not with hatred, but with hunger. "Alira," Mark said firmly. "Stay with me. You are safe." She shook her head, gasping. "No, safe. Not safe." Her voice cracked. "I hurt you. I cannot stop." Her body shook violently. She collapsed to her knees, clutching at the floor as if the cabin itself was tilting. Mark rushed to her side, catching her before she struck the ground. Her skin burned like fire in his arms. He could feel her trembling against him. Neighbors outside began to notice. Strange noises echoed from the cabin, muffled cries and the sound of wood breaking. A pair of men stopped nearby, whispering suspicions. One muttered, "That human is hiding something." Another said, "I heard glowing ones are dangerous. He'll bring death to us all." But they did not dare enter. The reputation of humans as death worlders kept them at a distance. Inside, Mark placed Alira back on the bed. She gripped his hand desperately, her glowing eyes staring into his. "Go. Leave me. Before too late," she begged. Her voice carried both fear and sorrow. He shook his head. "I won't leave you. Not now. Not ever." Her eyes filled with tears, yet still her body fought against itself. She cried out, twisting, her glowing marks pulsing wildly. The heat in the room rose until the air itself shimmered. Mark drenched a cloth in water and pressed it against her forehead, trying to cool her. His hands steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. Hours passed, and the storm inside her only grew stronger. Her whispers became desperate pleas. "Mark, no, near me. I break. I burn you." He ignored her warnings, staying by her side, his calm voice the only anchor she had. Then suddenly she collapsed completely, her strength gone. She lay trembling in his arms, her skin burning but her breathing shallow. He pressed 2 fingers against her neck, the pulse wild yet fading. "Stay with me, Alira," he whispered. "You are not alone." She opened her eye, as weakly, her lips trembling. "Why? You not afraid?" He looked at her firmly. "Because fear never saved anyone, but staying does." She tried to speak again, but only one word escaped. "Season." Then her eyes rolled shut, her body limp. Mark felt a deep chill despite the heat. He lifted her carefully and laid her back on the bed. He sat beside her through the night, refusing to rest, his mind torn between dread and determination. The whispers outside grew louder. Some colonists gathered near the edge of the path, staring at the cabin with suspicion. They wondered if the human had brought something cursed into their midst, but none dared confront him yet. Inside, the cabin smelled of sweat, smoke, and burning heat. Mark wiped her face gently, her glowing marks now flickering weaker. It was as if she was caught between life and death, between survival and destruction. Mark leaned closer, his voice low. Whatever this season is, whatever storm lives inside you, I'll fight it with you. He clenched his fists, even if it burns me. The firelight danced across the cabin walls, shadows stretching like claws. Alira twitched in her sleep, whispering broken words in her tongue. He did not understand them, but he felt the meaning in his chest, a plea for mercy, for release, for love. The storm outside had ended days ago, but the storm within had only just begun, and Mark knew this was not just her fight anymore. It was his too, between danger and desire. The sun barely touched the horizon when Mark heard movement outside the cabin. At first he thought it was only neighbors curious about the noises, but then he caught a sound sharper than footsteps, low voices speaking in a tongue that was not human. His heart tightened. He stepped to the window, pulling the curtain just enough to see. 3 figures stood at the edge of the trees. Their tall frames glowed faintly like Alira's, though their eyes carried no fear or weakness, only cold judgment. One of them raised his hand and pointed at the cabin. The others nodded. Mark's stomach turned. They had come for her. Inside, Alira stirred weakly on the bed. Her marks pulsed faintly as she whispered, "They come." Her voice shook with both dread and shame. "My people. They know. I hear." She tried to rise, but her legs failed her. She gripped the blanket, trembling. Mark turned to her. "What do they want?" She looked at him with hollow eyes. "To take me. To end me. They say I unclean, season is curse. They erase those like me." Mark's jaw tightened. He grabbed the rifle leaning near the door, not because he wanted to fight, but because he refused to let them touch her. "They'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice low but steady. Alira shook her head desperately. "No, Mark. You fight them. They kill you, please. Leave me. I'm not worth your life." Her tears fell freely now. "You do not understand. This season inside me, I can hurt you worse than they can." Mark stepped closer, kneeling beside her bed. He brushed the sweat from her forehead with a steady hand. "Listen to me, Alira. I've seen death before. I've seen storms tear apart entire camps. I've seen men fall beside me in war. But never once did I walk away from someone who needed me. I won't start now." Her lips trembled as she stared at him. Her glowing eyes softened with something deeper, then fear. For a moment she forgot the pain inside her. The voices outside grew louder. The door rattled under a heavy knock. "Human," one of them called in broken English. "Send her out. She is not yours. She belongs to us." Mark stood firm, his rifle ready. He shouted back, "She belongs to no one. She stays here." His voice cut through the morning air like steel. The silence that followed was heavy. Then the door shook again, harder this time. Alira cried out, "Mark, no fight. They stronger than you." But Mark did not move from his place. The door burst open. The 3 aliens entered, their glowing skin lighting the dim cabin. They carried no weapons, but their presence was enough to freeze the air. The leader pointed at Alira. "She is sickness," he hissed. "Season has begun. She will burn you, burn all. Better she gone." Mark raised his rifle, his hands steady. "You will not touch her." For a moment the aliens looked at him with surprise. They were used to fear, to obedience, not defiance. One of them stepped closer, towering over him, but Mark did not back down. His eyes locked with theirs, unshaken. Alira reached out weakly from the bed. Please stop, she begged. Mark, they write, I dangerous. Her voice cracked, torn between self-hatred and her need for him. Mark turned his head just enough to look at her, his voice soft but strong. Dangerous or not, you're alive. That means you deserve a chance, and no one will take that from you. The aliens hissed, stepping forward. In a flash, Mark swung the rifle like a staff, striking the nearest one across the chest. The alien staggered back, shocked by the force. The second rushed him, but Mark ducked low, using every ounce of human survival instinct. His boot drove into the alien's leg, sending it crashing against the wall. The leader bared his teeth, glowing brighter as he advanced. You fool human! She will destroy you when the season burns fully. Mark tightened his grip, his voice sharp as a blade. Then let it destroy me. But it will not be you who decides her fate. For a tense moment, the leader froze, staring at him. Behind the anger in his glowing eyes, there was something else, unease. Humans were not supposed to stand against them like this, not with such fire, not with such madness. Finally, the leader hissed a command in his own tongue. The two others pulled themselves up, glaring but obeying. They backed toward the door, leaving the cabin filled with silence and heat. The leader spat his final words. She will kill you, human. You will beg for death before the end. Then they vanished into the mist. Mark lowered the rifle slowly, his body tense but unbroken. He turned to Alira, who lay trembling, tears streaming down her face. Why? She whispered. Why risk all this? For me? He walked to her side, laying the rifle aside, his voice soft now. Because no one deserves to be thrown away, not even when they think they are dangerous. He placed his hand gently over hers, her burning skin pressed against his calloused palm, her lips parted but no words came. Only the sound of her rapid breathing, her glowing eyes locked onto his, and in them was something more than fear now. It was the spark of trust and something even deeper she dared not name. But even as she looked at him, her body shook harder, the heat rising once more. The storm inside her had not ended. It was only gathering strength, and Mark knew that the true battle was still ahead, the choice of a Deathworlder. The cabin was silent after the intruders left, but the silence was heavy, filled with fear and the echo of their warning. Alira lay on the bed shaking, her body burning hotter than ever. Her glowing marks spread across her skin like rivers of fire. Mark sat beside her, wiping her face with a wet cloth, his jaw clenched in grim determination. She whispered with trembling lips, Mark, you should have let them take me. They write, I dangerous. Her voice cracked as tears rolled down her cheeks. Season will not stop. It will break me. And you. Mark leaned closer, his voice steady though his heart pounded. I don't care what they say. I don't care what this season is. I'm not abandoning you. He pressed the cool cloth to her burning skin. If it tries to break us, then we break it together. Alira shook her head. You not understand. My people cast us away because we become monsters. Desire and pain twist inside until nothing left. No mind, only hunger. I do not want you see me like that. Her glowing eyes met his with shame. I do not want to hurt you. Her body arched suddenly, a cry escaping her lips. She gripped his arm so tightly he felt her nails cut into his skin. Heat radiated from her like fire. The air in the cabin shimmered as if it could ignite. Mark held her steady, whispering calming words. Breathe, Alira. Stay with me. But her mind was slipping. He could see it in her eyes. The wildness building like a storm that no chains could hold. She gasped. It begins. I cannot stop it. Outside, the colony stirred uneasily. Whispers spread among the people. Some spoke of strange lights glowing from Mark's cabin, others of screams that carried in the night. Fear grew like a shadow, but no one dared approach the human's door. They had seen him defy aliens without flinching. Inside, Mark's resolve hardened. He knew this was not just Alira's fight, it was his too. He gripped her hand tightly, ignoring the heat burning his palm. You're not alone. I won't let you lose yourself." Her glowing marks pulsed violently. She twisted in agony, her voice breaking into desperate cries. "Why? Why you stay? You could leave. You could live. Why suffer for me?" Mark leaned close, his voice low but fierce. "Because that's what humans do. We suffer for those we care about. We stand even when it hurts. That is what makes us stronger." His words struck through her haze like lightning in a storm. For a moment, her wild eyes softened, but then another wave hit her, stronger than before. She screamed, her body convulsing. Mark held her down, his muscles straining against her alien strength. She begged between gasps, "Kill me. Please. End it before I destroy you." Mark froze at her words. His heart ached at the desperation in her voice, but he shook his head violently. "No, I will never kill you, Alira. Not while you're fighting, not while you're still here." The firelight flickered across their faces. Her sweat soaked the blanket. Her glowing marks blazed brighter than ever. The heat in the room became unbearable, yet Mark did not step away. He whispered into her ear, his voice steady and human. "You are not a monster. You are Alira, and you are not alone." His words reached her even as the season tore at her mind. She gasped, clinging to him as though he was the last anchor keeping her from drowning. Her breathing slowed slightly, the wildness in her eyes dimming for just a heartbeat. Outside, shadows moved near the trees. The aliens who had left earlier still watched from afar, waiting for the human to break. One of them sneered, "Soon he will beg for mercy. None can endure a burning one." But the leader remained silent, his gaze fixed on the cabin with unease. Inside, Mark sat with Alira through the endless night, his arms wrapped around her trembling frame, his shirt soaked from her heat, his skin burned, but he did not let go. He whispered story after story of Earth, of storms he had survived, of battles he had endured, reminding her of who she was with, reminding her of his strength. She listened in fragments, her voice broken. "Deathworlder," she whispered once, almost in awe, "you should not survive this. But you do." Mark gave a tired smile. "That's what we do, Alira. We survive the impossible." The night stretched on, each hour heavier than the last. By dawn, her body still burned, but her breathing steadied. Her glowing marks flickered less violently. The storm inside her had not ended, but his presence had held it back. Mark's arms ached, his skin was raw from the heat, but he did not release her even once. He knew the hardest part was yet to come, but he also knew the choice had been made. He would not abandon her, no matter the cost. And as the pale light of morning touched the cabin walls, Mark whispered softly, "You'll make it through this, and when you do, I'll still be here." Alira's lips trembled as she looked at him. For the first time since she had spoken of her season, hope flickered in her glowing eyes. Love in the fire. The dawn light crept into the cabin, but peace did not follow. Alira still burned with the fire of her season. Her glowing marks pulsed like living veins of flame, her body trembling as though two forces fought inside her, one to consume, the other to survive. Mark sat by her side, his arms weak, his eyes red from sleepless nights, yet his grip on her hand was unshaken. She looked at him with tears spilling from her glowing eyes. "Mark, you stay too long. You hurt yourself. Leave me. Let me end." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. She tried to pull away, but his hand held hers firm. Mark's voice was low but fierce. "I told you, Alira, I will not abandon you. Not when you need me most." Her breathing grew heavier, her skin burning against his. She cried out, her body arching as the storm inside reached its peak. The cabin shook with her scream. Outside, the air shimmered with heat, as though fire itself had been born. The aliens who watched from the trees stepped back in fear, their leader whispering, "She will destroy him. No human can endure that blaze." Yet still they did not dare enter. Mark pulled Alira into his arms as she roars. Ithed, his voice calm even as his body burned. "Listen to me. You are more than this season. You are not a curse. You are a Lyra." His words cut through the storm like a knife. Her wild eyes met his. For a heartbeat, she fought against the hunger twisting inside her. "Why, Mark? Why give me hope when all I bring is ruin?" He held her face gently, ignoring the searing heat. "Because hope is stronger than fear, and because you deserve to live, even if it costs me everything." Her lips trembled, her body shook. The fire inside her raged, tearing at her mind, yet his words, his presence, anchored her. She clung to him desperately, her nails digging into his back. Her voice broke. "You will die if you stay," Mark whispered against her ear. "Then I will die keeping my promise." Something shifted inside her at those words. The storm inside clashed against itself. Her glowing marks flared blindingly bright, then dimmed. Her scream filled the cabin once more, but this time it was not only pain, it was release. She collapsed against him, trembling violently. Her skin still warm, but the unbearable fire began to fade. Her breathing slowed, uneven but steadying. Her glowing marks flickered softly instead of burning. Mark held her close, whispering, "It's passing. Stay with me." His voice broke with exhaustion, but he did not let go. Hours passed like years. At last, the storm inside her quieted. The glow on her skin dimmed until only faint patterns remained. Her breathing deepened into exhausted sleep. For the first time since he had found her, she was at peace. Mark leaned back against the wall, his arms aching, his skin blistered from the heat. Yet a faint smile touched his lips. He had endured. He had kept her alive. When Alira finally opened her eyes again, the fire was gone from them, replaced by tears. She touched his burned hands with shaking fingers. "Why? Why would you suffer this for me?" Her voice was no longer broken, it carried wonder. Mark met her gaze, tired but unshaken. "Because that's what it means to be human. We fight for those we care for, no matter the cost." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not of sorrow. They were of gratitude, of something deeper. She whispered, "You saved me, when even my own people would not." Outside, the aliens watched in silence. For the first time they felt unease. The leader spoke quietly. "The human survived her season. Impossible. No one survives the burning." Fear crept into his voice. Perhaps the stories of Deathworlders are true. The group turned away into the forest, unwilling to challenge the force they had witnessed. Inside, Alira pressed her forehead against Mark's chest, her voice soft. "I thought I was cursed. I thought I had no worth, but you showed me I wrong. You showed me mercy." Mark stroked her hair gently. "You're not a curse, Alira. You're alive, and that is enough." The fire in the hearth had burned to embers, but warmth filled the cabin from something greater, from the bond of two souls who should never have met, yet did. The season had not destroyed her. It had nearly broken him, yet together they endured. And in that survival, something new was born, trust, hope, and a connection stronger than fear. As night returned, Alira whispered before sleep took her, "Mark, you not just saved me, you gave me reason to live again." And in the silence that followed, Mark closed his eyes at last, his arms still around her, his voice faint but certain. "And I will keep giving you reasons." The storm had ended, but the story of the human and the alien girl had only just begun. The end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.